You've heard of companies falling from grace. You've heard of startups that burned out spectacularly. But imagine a global fintech darling, one that was paraded as the next big thing in digital payments and financial technology, whose entire growth story was built on smoke and mirrors. And when the truth finally came out, investors lost around $4 billion in value, and the company collapsed entirely. Today, we're digging into a story that reads like a thriller, feels like a fraud movie, and stands as one of the largest marketing deceptions of the modern financial era. This is the story of Wirecard, a company once celebrated as Germany's fintech pride, whose meteoric rise turned into an epic downfall, shaking investors, regulators, and markets around the world. We begin in the late 1990s, when digital payments were just emerging. The internet was transforming commerce, and opportunities were everywhere. In this environment, a relatively unknown German company called Wirecard began positioning itself as a leader in online payment processing, the technology behind digital transactions, merchant services, and future financial infrastructure. Investors and analysts saw something special. Here was a company that wasn't just participating in the fintech revolution, it claimed to be leading it. Wirecard marketed itself as a stalwart of reliability, innovation, and explosive growth potential. Soon, financial press and market watchers were touting it as a European rival to Silicon Valley stars, a true challenger in the world of digital finance. It sounded brilliant. It sounded credible. It sounded worthy of investment, and investors responded in kind. The company's stock soared as institutional funds, hedge funds, and individual investors poured capital into it, believing that they were backing a company poised to dominate the future of payments. At its peak, Wirecard was listed on Germany's prestigious DAX index, the benchmark of blue-chip companies. That's a position held by the biggest corporations in the country. What started as a modest financial services firm was now seen as a flagship tech success story. The marketing narrative was airtight global expansion, booming revenue, strategic partnerships, and the promise of becoming a major backbone in digital transactions across Europe and beyond. Except there was a problem no one outside the company fully understood at the time. Much of what Wirecard was marketing to investors was not real. Here's where the line between good marketing and deception gets dangerously thin. Wirecard didn't just tell investors they had great technology. They reported financials that painted a picture of growth and credibility far beyond reality. They presented figures and forecasts that suggested robust operations, expanding market presence, and strong cash positions, and investors believed it. But behind closed doors, auditors, regulators, and whistleblowers were beginning to uncover troubling anomalies. It took years for these discrepancies to surface publicly, and it began with questions about missing funds and inconsistent reporting. Analysts noticed that cash balances reported by Wirecard seemed suspiciously large and inconsistent with the business they claimed to be running. There were whispers, rumors, and early investigative reporting dates back years before the crisis finally went mainstream. Eventually, auditors could no longer ignore the discrepancies. When Wirecard's audit firm refused to sign off on financial statements due to a missing $9 billion in supposed cash holdings, it triggered a cascade of revelations. The company was forced to admit that the money likely did not exist. In one moment, the fire age shattered. This wasn't a company that had inflated earnings by creative accounting or been hit by market forces. It was a company that presented figures to investors and partners that never matched reality. Cash reported on balance sheets simply didn't exist. One powerful image from this entire debacle is not a chart of rising stock prices, but the stark realization that the money on the books wasn't real. It was the financial equivalent of discovering that the walls of your house were painted cardboard. Within days of the admission that $9 billion was missing from its accounts, Wirecard declared insolvency. Thousands of investors, institutions, and individuals alike watched the value of their holdings evaporate. Billions in market capitalization disappeared almost overnight. And make no mistake, for many investors, this was not just a temporary market dip. This was a total financial wipeout. Massive institutional funds, sovereign wealth portfolios, individual retirement accounts, all exposed to this myth of growth, were blindsided. Suddenly, the company that once symbolized European fintech excellence became one of the biggest cautionary tales in corporate history. Now let's dive deeper into what this marketing deception actually looked like. Wirecard wasn't selling shoes or streaming subscriptions. It was selling trust in its claims about cash, revenue sources, market share, and financial strength. The presentation wasn't some little exaggeration in a press release. It was the foundation of how the company convinced investors, partners, and analysts that it was a future financial powerhouse. This is where marketing and finance met, and where strategy crossed into deception. Wirecard marketed numbers that influenced investment decisions, boosted stock valuations, and gave confidence to lenders and partners. But those numbers were based on bogus confirmations from supposedly overseas accounts that were later found to lack the funds the company claimed. Think about that for a second. Not only was Wirecard selling the idea that it was a global player in fintech, but it was selling precise financial figures that influenced billions of dollars worth of investments. When those figures turned out to be inaccurate, it wasn't a small discrepancy. It was a multi-billion-dollar vacuum, and the market reacted accordingly. Investors weren't buying products or future earnings. They were buying into confidence that the company's financial footing was secure, that the growth narrative was genuine, and that the future was bright. That kind of confidence is a powerful marketing tool, but when it's built on false statements, it becomes deeply destructive. So how did this all come undone? The unraveling began not with regulators, but with journalists. Investigative reporting in the Financial Times raised questions about Wirecard's accounting practices, irregularities in reported revenue, and suspicious financial confirmations allegedly tied to third-party partners in Asia, where Wirecard saw opportunity for convincing storytelling. Reporters saw inconsistency and lack of transparency. Over time, as reporting intensified, so did scrutiny from auditors and external investigators. Even Wirecard's longtime auditor, a major accounting firm entrusted with checking its books, eventually refused to sign off on the company's statements because the financial figures simply couldn't be validated. Once that happened, it was only a matter of days before the facade began collapsing. Wirecard's stock plummeted. Investors lost confidence. Financial regulators stepped in, and in a matter of weeks, years of inflated statements and misleading marketing claims led to a complete collapse. To put it bluntly, what was once marketed as one of the most promising fintech companies in Europe became one of its most notorious fraud cases. But let's be clear, this wasn't just a financial story. This was a human story. It involved real people making decisions based on information they believed was accurate. It involved pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, institutional portfolios, and everyday investors who believed they were backing a legitimate company with genuine potential. And it also involved executives who, whether through hubris, ambition, or intentional deception, created a narrative that was far more compelling and far less true than reality. The fallout didn't just cost billions. It shook market confidence, sparked investigations into auditing practices, and triggered debates about oversight in financial markets, especially in Europe, where this company was once seen as a standard bearer for tech innovation. Regulators were criticized for not catching the inconsistencies sooner. Auditors were criticized for signing off on financial statements that should have raised red flags earlier. And investors were left wondering, how did we miss this? Here's the thing about marketing lies in business: they're not always careless. They can be strategically crafted, tightly woven, and emotionally compelling. Just like advertising can make you feel that a product is life-changing, corporate marketing, combined with financial reporting, can make investors feel that an enterprise is not just worthwhile, but unstoppable. That's exactly what happened with Wirecard. The company didn't just promote its services. It promoted belief, and belief can be more powerful than numbers until the numbers fail to add up. Then the belief collapses. Suddenly, stock prices drop. Capital evaporates, And the narrative that once captivated an entire market becomes a symbol of misplaced trust. But the Wirecard saga also offers a powerful lesson. No matter how good a company's marketing narrative is, you always have to question, verify, and dig deeper. Numbers deserve scrutiny, claims deserve validation, and we should never let belief blind us to evidence. Perhaps that's the greatest takeaway from this entire experience. The marketing lie didn't just cost 400 billion in investor value. It reminded the world that narratives are persuasive, but truth prevails in reality. Now it's over to you. What do you think is the biggest warning sign when investing in a company that markets itself aggressively? Have you ever been tempted by a company's story, only to later question if it was hype or substance? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. Because in a world full of slick presentations and compelling narratives, the real skill is learning how to separate what sounds good from what is actually true. That's the story of the marketing lie that cost investors $4 billion, not just a cautionary tale, but a lesson in due diligence, scrutiny, and the unpredictable power of storytelling in the financial world.